Hi, everybody, and welcome to our EP meeting tonight. Tonight, we're fortunate to have somebody that works a lot with animal rescue, and especially this time of year with all the baby boomers out there, all of our little wildlife critters. This is a perfect time of year to have Carolyn Wilder with us. She's with the Wildlife Rescue League, which is a totally community-based nonprofit organization made up of volunteers that obviously really love working with wildlife. Carolyn's been with the Wildlife Rescue League since 2008 when she was trying to transition from her job as an attorney and looking for something else. And she landed this and she stayed with it since 2008. It's really remarkable. The program tonight will be how we can peacefully coexist with our native wildlife neighbors right here in Great Falls. So without any further ado, I'm going to turn it over to you, Carolyn, and we're thankful that you were able to be here and that you're not taking over the screen.
I know it because the last thing I want to do is see a picture of myself. So
Thank you.
I know. So I'm very glad to do this. We love doing presentations to garden groups, civic associations, um, anybody, students. We do schools because we want everyone to learn more about the wildlife that's around us and what we need to do and what we don't need to do in order to live peacefully with them. So a little bit about the Wildlife Rescue League. It was created in 1984. It is an all-volunteer organization. It is a nonprofit, and we're virtual. So people always say, "Well, where are you located?" Well, we have a PO box in Falls Church, and we have a storage unit in Maryfield. But other than that, everybody works from their computers. We do have property. It's a little over 94 acres in Woodford that was donated to us a couple of years ago. And we are in the process of building a brick and mortar wildlife center there. Probably will begin functioning next year. We're still raising money. There's zoning permits that we're having to meet. There is a building, a house on the property that we can use, but we need outdoor caging, et cetera. So a lot of our fundraising right now is dedicated to raising the money that we need to open that center. So the mission of Wildlife Rescue League is to support the rehabilitation of injured, sick, and orphaned wildlife, and through education, such as this, to foster appreciation of our wild neighbors. So what we do is we have a helpline, and that helpline is open from 9 to 5 during standard time, 9 to 7 during daylight savings time. And if you find wildlife that needs help or that you just have questions about it, you can call our helpline. We will call you back and we will either give you information on what you need to do, or we will refer you to a vet or a rehabilitator that you can take that animal to for treatment and then rehabilitation. We do have volunteers that transport from shelters and from the vets that we partner with. We don't pick up from the public except under very extreme circumstances because we don't have the bandwidth to send people to people's houses. So we rely on the public to bring the animals to the rehabbers or to the vet. We also provide food, formula, supplies, medication. We reimburse for medical expenses because rehabilitators in the Commonwealth of Virginia are not allowed to charge for their services. So everything they do is volunteer. Some of them do set up as nonprofits and you can donate to them, but otherwise they're pretty much on their own. So over the years, we have spent more, and as we've raised more money, we spend more money on the supplies for our rehabbers. We have a budget of probably 23,000 just for supplies alone, formula, food, syringes, etc., the things that they need. And then we have other reimbursement programs for them. The other thing we do is public education. So as I mentioned, we talk to schools, we talk to Girl Scout troops, we talk to garden clubs, the master naturalists, the master gardeners, anybody that's interested in wildlife and wanting to know more about how we interact with it and when it needs help and when it doesn't. So there are quite a few federal and state laws regarding wildlife. And in Virginia, the bottom line is it is unlawful to take or possess, own, keep, sell, or do anything with wildlife unless you have a rehabilitator permit or you fall under some other regulation. It is also unlawful to destroy or molest nests and dens of any wildlife. So that basically means that if a nest is built in a wreath on your front door, as long as there's nothing in that nest, you can tear it down as many times as you want. But once there are eggs or babies in there, you have to leave it alone until they fledge and leave. Same with mammals that might den under your deck or under your woodshed or something like that. Once there are babies, it's against the law to relocate them. And in general, it's against the law to relocate wildlife anyway. But we'll get into that a little later. Rehabilitators do have to be licensed. They're permitted by the state. You have to get a permit that where they come out and they look at your facility or your home. You get permitted for specific species. If you're doing songbirds or waterfowl, you also have to get a federal permit to take care of those because they are federally protected. And just as a little aside here, you'll see red-eared sliders, which are the turtles that we used to always buy in the pet store. People would buy them and then they'd get bigger and they'd let them go. And then something would happen. We are not allowed to rehab those because they're considered a nuisance or invasive species. So anytime somebody turns in a red-eared slider, it has to be euthanized unless we can find a sanctuary that will take it. You also can't trap or kill native wildlife without a permit. You can't transport across state lines. So you can't take the baby squirrel that you found in Virginia and take it to a rehabber in Maryland. The only one you can do is migratory birds because at some point the state figured out that the birds migrate across state lines. They don't notice those lines, and therefore we would be allowed to take birds across state line. We will sometimes do that when our bird rehabbers get full. We have an agreement with City Wildlife in DC that we can take our overflow to them on a temporary basis and vice versa. You also cannot keep any native wildlife as pets, and this includes turtles. It used to be you could take eastern box turtles home and make pets out of them, but they've become endangered and therefore it is no longer legal to do that. And all of those pictures that you see on Facebook and Instagram of these people, dressing up their possums and their raccoons, etc., they live in other states because they do not live here. They are not allowed to do that. The only people that can keep wildlife are rehabilitators, and even then, they only keep them until they can be released. And then, in unusual circumstances, if an animal is not releasable because it's been injured or there's a birth defect or something, rehabilitators can get educational permits, which will allow them to take those animals to not shows, to students, to presentations in order to educate people about them. But they're not releasable and they're under unusual circumstances. And just a little extra thing, several years ago, the state passed a law saying it was against the law to release balloons because you've probably seen stories about the balloons, the helium balloons particularly going up and then coming down and they land in the water and they look like jellyfish or they look like something else and geese eat them, fish eat them. They've got strings attached to them that get tangled up in their feet, etc. And it's very, very detrimental to wildlife. And so they have now made that against the law. So I've told you that you can't possess, own, sell, buy, make a pet out of wildlife. However, if you see wildlife that needs help, you do have the ability legally to capture it and to transport it to a rehabilitator, a vet, a shelter. The shelters don't take wildlife, so forget that. To a rehabilitator or a vet. Um, but it's under specific purposes and circumstances. You're doing it at the direction of a rehabilitator. So if you find orphan baby squirrels and you can't get them reunited with mom, you're going to call our helpline and we're going to refer you to a rehabilitator. That rehabilitator, by being us referring you to them, has agreed to take that wildlife. And that allows you to then capture it, transport it, and get it to them. Now, I will say that in real life, what happens is if you find baby orphan stuff and you can't get it reunited or you know the mom is dead, you're going to end up, we're going to tell you to put it in a box and we'll go over that. And then we're going to get you to a rehabilitator, but we want you to stabilize it as much as possible so that it doesn't stress out. But you're only allowed to do very minimal things. And the one thing I will tell you over and over again during this presentation is you are not going to feed or give fluids to any wildlife. Okay. So if you do have to capture it, you're going to put it in a box and you're going to put a close weave cloth or a paper towel or something in the box with it. Make sure the box can be shut so it doesn't escape. And you're going to put a heat source under one half of that box, or you're going to put a rice sock, which you have heated up in the microwave, in one half of the box. That allows the animal to get warm, but also doesn't boil it. Knows it has to have the ability to get away from the heat source. And then you're going to put it in a room in a dark, quiet place and leave it alone until we tell you where to take it. And that's really all you're going to do with that wildlife until you actually transport it. Then once that wildlife goes to a rehabilitator, we often have people saying, "Oh, can you tell me, how it's doing? How's my little squirrel doing?" Well, that rehabber has 50 little squirrels. They're not going to know which one is yours, but they'll try to give you information if they can. When that squirrel's ready to be released, it doesn't come back to you. Sometimes what we will do is if we're releasing back to a specific area, which we try to do, and in some cases, like turtles, we have to release exactly where they were found. Then they might call you if it was something special and see if you wanted to be there to watch the release. But it doesn't come back to you to be released. So there are some species that we do not rehab. Now, I know that there is Wildlife Center of Virginia does take in black bear cubs, but I think they do that under an exception. Otherwise, we are not allowed to rehabilitate bear, coyote, adult white-tailed deer, or elk. So, I've talked a little bit about injured and orphaned wildlife. So the first thing you're going to do if you find it is call us to get advice and a referral. If it's mammals or birds, handle them with a glove or towel because they have fleas and they have mites, and also mammals bite, and you don't need that. And as I said, you're going to put it in a container, you're going to put a towel or something in there, put a heat source, put it in a warm, dark place, and don't feed it. And the only exception on this is hummingbirds, because if a hummingbird is injured and you put it in a dark box, it goes into a state of torpor, so kind of a semi-unconsciousness. And if it's injured, it may not come out of that. So they recommend putting that in like a clear or a white plastic box so that it's not so dark. And you will not feed or water without rehabber guidance. So, as you can see, baby birds are very defenseless. They have very few feathers, if any. They have mouths, very big mouths. They're blind and they can't hear and they can't fly. So they're totally dependent on their parents for food. So what do you do if you find baby birds? Okay. Sometimes with the storms that we have come through, birds' nests end up on the ground. Sometimes if you've had your trees trimmed in the spring, and if there are nests in the tree, those nests end up on the ground. What you can do is try to get that nest back into the tree or in a bush very close to it. Because they're not ready to leave the nest. They are not going to survive without their parents feeding them. Okay. If you can see the nest and you can get the baby bird into the nest, that works well as well. If you can't find the nest or you can't get it, then again, you could possibly create a a substitute nest, like, those little strawberry baskets or even the hanging baskets with the sphagnum moss and such in it, and create a nest to see if the parents will come back. So if you find a nest, if you can get it back into the tree or very close to where it came down, that's your first choice. If the birds are on the ground and the nest isn't around, you can create a substitute nest and see if that works. You're going to then watch from a distance to see if mom and dad come and find them and feed them, because both parents feed the birds. But if after a couple hours you haven't seen them come, then they may need rescuing. So one of the little things is that I know my mom told me that if I pick up a baby bird, its parents won't come back because it'll smell us on them. Well, birds don't have much of a sense of smell, so you can handle them. Again, you're going to want to use gloves just because of the bugs, but your handling of a baby bird is not going to prevent the mom and dad from coming back. I think our parents told us that so that we wouldn't be bringing baby birds home. Okay. So if you've done everything you can for this baby bird or birds or a nest of birds, and mom and dad don't find it and don't come back, then you're going to call us. And we will then refer you to a rehabilitator. There's actually one that's in Falls Church, I mean, in Annandale, that she takes the majority of our songbirds. And we will refer you to her, and you will take the birds to her, and then she will take care of them. You don't feed them. There's two reasons for this. One, they have special diets. Two, their trachea and their esophagus are very close together. Okay. And if you take an eyedropper and decide you're going to give it water or fluids of any type, it's very possible that that will go down their trachea rather than their esophagus. And they can't cough up water like we can, when we're choking on it. And what happens is it gets down into their lungs, they end up developing pneumonia and they end up dying. And so what we've actually done is made things worse for them. So you don't feed them, you don't water them unless the rehabber you're talking to has given you specific instructions to do so. So what do you do if you find a fledgling? Okay, this is what a fledgling looks like. They have most of their feathers. They have their eyes are open. They can hop around, and they've basically jumped, or mom and dad have pushed them out of the nest, saying, "Okay, it's time to go find a job. We're done here." So they're hopping around on the ground, and it can take several days for them to figure out how to fly. So I know everybody knows the Peanuts comic strip, and we all know Woodstock. This is Woodstock stage, okay? Flittering, fluttering, landing on things, a little upside down. They're learning to fly. It can take several days, but if you watch them, mom and dad are still around and they're feeding them. So they're still in good shape. One of the things that we will often get calls about is, oh, there's this baby bird on the ground and it's got one wing down. It's got a broken wing. We need to rescue it. No, we don't. We have to think when we were growing up, and I'm really dating myself, of bicycles with training wheels. Now, I guess you could say balance bikes and you put your foot down. They're doing that to get their balance. They're still a little wobbly, so they'll put a wing down to establish balance. But they don't need our help unless they're lying on their back or their side and they don't get up, or there's flies or fly eggs on them, then something's definitely wrong and you need to call us so that you can bring it to a rehabilitator. So some of the issues that we often run into are these window strikes, where they hit your window or they hit your car windows or they're attacking your car mirrors, but they're flying at night. They're seeing, but during the day, they see reflections through the windows. So if you have greenery in your house, or if you have a commercial building and it has an atrium and has beautiful greenery, or it's reflecting glass, so there it's reflecting the tree that's in front of your window. They mistake that for a pass through and they run into the windows. There is two theories of what to do in that situation. If a bird hits a window and falls and is unconscious, you could, what we have always said is put it in a box, leave the top open outside in the shade somewhere, keep an eye on it. And if after an hour or two, it may regain consciousness, it's just stunned and it'll fly away. Okay. There are new thoughts coming out primarily from the centers that have vets saying no matter what happens to it, if it hits the window and it's knocked down like that, it needs to go to a rehabber or a vet because it could have internal injuries. The problem is there's not that many rehabbers and vets that can take that many window strikes. So we're still kind of following the first rule. If it can fly away, then it's good. If it doesn't fly away, then it's most likely got neurological damage or a broken neck. It's going to die, and you could take it to a vet and ask them to euthanize it, or you just wait. Birds in a dryer or stove vent, these are basically starlings. And even though we're legally, those are considered a nuisance species, and so you're not supposed to rehab them. If you find a nest there, what you can do is get a gallon milk jug, cut a hole in it, move the nest into the milk jug and hang it very close to the vent. And the mom and dad will come back and take care of the babies. And in the meantime, you're going to close up that vent so they don't nest there again next year. I mentioned the nests in wreaths. About the best you can do on that is if there are babies or eggs in there, if you could move that wreath maybe a foot away. So maybe it's not on your front door, but it's on a wall there. But other than that, you have to leave it there and go in another way until they fledge. And then there are several different diseases that have been affecting our songbirds: conjunctivitis, crusty eye, West Nile. Now we've got avian flu. We've had that. They've always had it, but it seems to be getting worse. It seems to be attacking waterfowl and raptors the most around here. Um, and then birds in your chimney. So chimney swifts, which are federally protected, they nest in chimneys and vertical places between the months of May and September. So if you hear chirping and stuff going on in your chimney during that time frame, you very likely have chimney swifts. Chimney swifts nest vertically. They build on the side. Their feet are not designed to stand to take off. They take off from vertical. So that's why they're doing that. They're in, barn silos, etc. Bats also nest in chimneys, such as they nest. And so the way you can tell whether you have chimney swifts or bats is if they fly out if you look outside and you see them flying out during the day or flying out at dusk, those are bats. If they're flying in at dusk, those are chimney swifts. Okay. And then the biggest issue that we've been running into are glue traps and lead poisoning. And you've probably read a lot of articles about a lot of eagles, a lot of raptors dying of lead poisoning because they are eating rodents that have been, or small mammals that have been shot, or fish, the osprey that are catching fish, the eagles that catch fish that have lead sinkers, weights in them, that the fish has swallowed because you caught it and let go. Those are causing a big problem. We've had a lot of raptor deaths from lead poisoning. Glue traps, which are usually used to catch mice in houses, not so much, but in barns, in other places where people don't want them. The problem is that they are very effective at catching the mice. They are also effective at catching everything else because if a raptor sees a mouse struggling on a glue trap, it's going to go down and try to catch it and it gets stuck. Or a snake sees a mouse on a glue trap, it's going to slither over it. It's going to get stuck. Even little bugs that get stuck on them, other birds come down to try to get the bugs and they get stuck. And this is a slow, painful death because they can't get off, they can't eat, they're suffering. And really, it's there's special ways that the rehabbers and the vets have to use to get the glue off of them. And like with snakes, it pulls their scales off, it pulls the feathers out. It's a horrible thing. And I know that there have been some states that have passed laws banning glue traps, but I happen to know that I was in Lowe's a couple of weeks ago and there's a lovely display of glue traps, and I wanted to turn it around backwards so nobody could see it. So, talking about window strikes, there was a program started several years ago in Canada called Lights Out, and we've started one here in Northern Virginia. And what it is you get volunteers that agree to go out during migratory season, which is April, May, and September, October. And they walk around these high-rise commercial buildings like Tyson's, Crystal City, etc. And they look for dead birds or window strike birds on the ground. If they're dead, they take pictures and write down the information. If they're still alive, they will take them to rehabbers. The purpose being they're trying to document how many birds are hitting these windows so that we can go to the builders, go to the legislative bodies to try to get them to make changes to the glass. This DC several years ago passed legislation requiring any replacement glass and any new building glass to be a certain kind that is not reflective so that it doesn't result in window strikes. And if you're interested in going around and looking for birds on the ground at 6 in the morning, contact us because they're always looking for people to help. The other thing about lights is the birds navigate by the stars. And so when we have all these buildings with lights on at night, or we have our porch lights on and they're nice and bright, the birds are distracted by that. They come down and then that's when they start hitting the windows. So a lot of the recommendations are to turn your lights off at night during that time frame. So mammals, where I said birds have very little sense of smell, mammals have a very good sense of smell. So when you are handling mammals, if you're rescuing them, you are going to want to wear gloves and minimize your touch of them. The other thing about mammals is the mothers almost always come back for the babies. So they don't abandon unless something has happened to the mother. And that's why we give advice on how to try to reunite the babies and the mother. The exception to this are possums, okay? And as you've all seen the pictures, mom's walking around with 12 babies on her back as she wanders through the day. Possums are transient. They don't have a den, so they don't come back to the same place every night. They just keep moving. And if one falls off or they stop for lunch and one forgets to get back on, she's not going to know that till the end of the day, and she is not going to come back for it. So if you do find a baby possum, it does need to be rescued. And we do have a lot of possum rehabbers now, so that's really great. Another way that possums get into our system is that if they get hit by a car, you could actually check to see if there are still babies alive in their pouch because they're marsupials. So they've got a pouch. These babies are all connected to mom by long nipples. And so if you ever decide you're going to stop and you find a dead possum and there's babies, you're going to take the whole possum to a rehabber, and that rehabber will disconnect them from the nipples because they actually swallow the nipples. But there are people that do that. I am not one of them. You're not going to see me on the side of the road picking up roadkill, but I will tell you lots of people do. All right. Squirrels have multiple nests. So if a nest gets blown down or it gets full of fleas, she moves the babies to another nest. All right. Cottontails are fed at dawn and dusk. And the reason for that is bunnies are prey to everything and predator to nothing. So everything wants to eat them and they don't eat anybody. So what mom does is she has them babies, she makes a little nest and she puts them in the nest and then she leaves for the day. And then she comes back at dusk and she feeds them real quick and then she leaves and she comes back at dawn. And the same is true for fawns for the same reason. And we'll talk about that later. So baby squirrels. If you find a baby squirrel and they're all different, when they're first born, they're just completely naked and they're quite ugly, but they're little pink things and they're called pinkies. And again, this is usually if a nest has blown down because mom's not usually moving them at that age. So if you find baby squirrels, you're going to check to make sure it's not injured like scratches, etc. If your cat or your dog has caught that squirrel, it needs to go to a vet because any cat or dog bite, even if it doesn't break the skin, that's going to require antibiotics. And we can refer you to a vet that can do that. If it's not hurt, if it hasn't been caught by a cat or a dog, then we're going to go back to our old standby. You're going to put it in a box with a clean towel or something and a heated rice sock. And if you need information on how to make a rice sock, I'll be glad to tell you. We have lots of kids, lots of schools will do it for us. We have lots of rice socks now because of that. Um, Ideally, if you can put the box where you found the baby, then either put it in the tree there or put it under the tree where it was found so that mom can come back. Because again, mom is not going to abandon her babies unless something has happened to mom. But if she's moving them, say she's moving them from one nest to another, or the nest has blown down, or one fell out, she has to take them one at a time to her secondary home. And so it can take really even more than 4 hours. You can put that out there as long as they're not in the sun, as long as you don't have dogs hanging around, and just watch from afar and see if mom comes. If if it seems like we're having trouble and she's not coming, there is actually a YouTube video that you can play, put your phone out there or loud, that's called Hungry Squirrel or Squirrel in Distress. I think it's Hungry Squirrel. And it makes baby squirrel sounds. And so maybe mom's having trouble locating where you put the babies. If you can play that and she's around, she's going to come find those babies. However, if something has happened to mom, or she doesn't come back, then you're going to bring the box inside. We don't leave it outside at night because the predators will get it. And you're going to call us and we're going to refer you to someone that takes the baby squirrels. And we're going to ask you to send us a picture. Everything that you find, we're going to probably ask you to send us a picture so we know approximate age and size because different rehabbers take care of different size squirrels. Same with the birds. That way we can identify the birds. Again, don't feed them. Don't try to give them water. Squirrels are on special diets. There's a squirrel formula that we buy for them. They don't do well on cow's milk. They don't do well on goat's milk. They do well on squirrel formula. If you give them other types of milk or formula, it messes up their digestive system to the point that when they get to the rehabber, they're in such distress that they very often will die. And so again, in trying to help, we have made things worse. So you find a baby bunny, same thing. Baby bunnies are normally found in very shallow nests, very often in the ground, maybe under a tree. So in the spring, before you start weed whacking your yard or mowing, look around for dead spots because that might actually be a bunny nest. And what mom does is she has the baby, she puts them in there, and then she leaves. As I said, she's gone all day, and then she comes back, feeds them very quickly, and then leaves again. So people watching are saying, "Oh no, something's wrong. Mom's not here. I haven't seen her in hours." Well, you won't because she is there quick, quick, like a bunny, and then she leaves again because she doesn't want to attract the predators with her scent to the babies who do not have a scent yet. So, same thing. If not hurt, try to find the nest. If it's hurt or if you can't find the nest, then you're going to call us. You can put them back in the nest, put the grass back over it, maybe put something on top, string or twigs, so you can tell if mom has come back. And then again, if not, then you're going to call us. Bunnies are very high stress. They have something called capture myopathy because again, they are prey to everything. So you don't want to be handling them. They're very difficult to rehab. So if there's any way at all to get them reunited with mom, we want to do it. Okay. I already told you about the baby possums. I'll let you see these real quick because I know I'm probably running out of time. But these are in rehab. These were probably all from one litter. All right. So rabies vector species, just very quickly, raccoons, foxes, groundhogs, skunks, beavers, coyotes, bats, but not possums. Possums, their body temperature is too low to maintain the rabies virus. The fact that we see these animals out in the middle of the day is not a sign of rabies. But these are some of the symptoms: lethargy, stupor, walking around tight circles, aggression, etc. But if anybody traps a rabies vector species, it has to be put to death. It has to be euthanized because they don't know if it has rabies or not. So you want to be careful with that. You don't want to just call animal control because you see a raccoon in the middle of the day, have them trap it because then he's by law supposed to euthanize it. So these are the different things that happen with mammals. You do get raccoons and squirrels in your chimneys. Raccoons are the only mammal that can turn around and climb out of a chimney. So if you have raccoons in your chimney, they can get out. But if you have squirrels in your chimney, they're going to have to come out through your fireplace. If you have decks, they can be denning under that. So I don't know how much time I have left, so I'm just going to keep going. I know it was mentioned that you all have a lot of foxes, and mange is a big situation around here, and it is against the law for the public to medicate or treat foxes or any wildlife. You're not allowed to. Back in the day, it used to be that public could treat it with medication and nobody knew any better. But it turns out that that's against the law, and there are a couple of reasons why. The medicine that can be applied can be dangerous to some large breeds of dog. So this was the medicine ivermectin that people used to use to treat dogs or to treat mange. But you have to dose it twice over a 10-day period. You have to make sure the same animal comes back, et cetera, et cetera. If you get bitten again, you're going to have to get the rabies shots and the fox is going to have to be euthanized. So that's why the state has made it against the law for the public to medicate. We do have rehabilitators that can walk you through a process whereby you are allowed to trap a fox on your property, and we can provide the trap for you, humane trap. Once that fox has been trapped, you're going to be in touch with this rehabilitator. You're going to call and say, hey, we've got the fox. They will come out and assess the animal. If it's a mild dose, they will medicate it right then and let it go with a new medication that works in a one dose. If it's got underlying infections, etc., she will take it back to her place and treat it and release it there. But it's lots of hoops to jump through, so that's why you work with us to get that set up. All right, it's against the law in Virginia to rehab adult deer. A lot of deer that have a broken leg, they still survive fine. But if it's been hit by a car or it's totally immobile, you're going to want to call animal control so they can humanely euthanize it, because you can't rehab them. It's against the law, but also who's going to be able to pick up a full-grown deer and carry it off somewhere to rehab it? And they just don't It's just against the law. So it's better to go ahead and humanely euthanize them. We have chronic wasting disease in this area. This came originally from Colorado. It's very similar to mad cow disease, which we've all heard of. There's a lot of description here that we're not going to go through, but you will see that Fairfax, Prince William, Arlington, Loudoun, Culpeper, Fauquier, chronic wasting disease has been found in those counties. Therefore, we are no longer allowed to rehab fawns in those counties. Okay. So it used to be that if you found a fawn and it did need help, we would refer you to a rehabber. In this area, we can't do that anymore. But a lot of fawns don't need our help because mom places them somewhere where she thinks is safe, and she tells them to stay still, don't make a sound until I come back. Not like our children, but they're much better about it. So her safe place might be against the side of a house in tall grass, sometimes even on a deck because she does it before dawn. And it's just like the bunnies. Mom feeds the baby at dawn and at dusk, and she very rarely comes back in between because she doesn't want to attract predators to the baby. So if you find a fawn, just leave it alone and watch it. And even though you don't see mom during the day, it's not a problem. But if it hasn't moved at all and it's been crying, or if it's wandering around and crying, then something may have happened to mom. Okay. And normally there would be intervention needed. Also, if you see flies, fly eggs, if it's injured. But again, because we are in the counties in which we can no longer rehab, there is very little we can do about this. The only thing we can do is try to attract other deer to them. The deer travel in herds to an extent, so there may be aunts and uncles, other older siblings around. So what you're going to need to do is have this baby making noises to attract the adults to come get her. Now, this is the sound of a hungry fawn. A fawn in distress is even more insistent, and all right, you can stop that. You can find that on YouTube as well. It's called Fawn in Distress, and you can play that. And if there are other deer around, they will come and they will get the fawn. Um, because again, if they don't, there is really literally nothing we can do. And it's the most frustrating thing we've ever run into because we're just going to tell you, you're just going to have to leave it alone and hope for the best. And we all know how well that's going to work. So it's against the law to relocate wildlife. There are several good reasons. They're territorial. If you move them, so you find wildlife in your attic and you have somebody come and take it away, and they say, I'll go take it to the park down the road. Well, that animal doesn't have a den, doesn't have nests, doesn't have food source, doesn't know what the predators are. It's not going to survive. So we think that we're helping them because we're releasing them. And I have actually done this back before I knew better. Releasing in a park saying, oh, you got all this lovely land. Well, they don't have anything because it's like us, moving to Oklahoma City and having never lived there before and expected to find a house and food and clothing the first night. So you don't want to relocate wildlife. And that's why you're not allowed to take it off your property. So if you find wildlife in your attic and you hire a humane conflict management company, they can remove it from the attic, but they can't remove it from your property. So they have to release it on the property. And so you want to be sure that when you're removing something from your attic or anywhere else that they can't get back in. And there are ways to do that. And the main thing you want to do is if you've got animals in your attic, or I had raccoons in my wall, between my floors, you want to make sure that once you have excluded the mother, because there are things called excluder devices where they can put that into the hole, the animal comes out but can't get back in. But then someone needs to go up there and find out if there are babies, which there most likely are. and then you have to remove the babies. You're going to bring them outside. You're going to put them in a box, like we talked about earlier. And mom, if she's still around because we've just released her, is going to come get the babies. Nobody gets killed. Um, Nobody gets orphaned. It's the best way to do it. And so there are humane wildlife conflict management companies, but you need to be careful. You need to ask them these questions because there's no certification. Anybody can use the word humane. You want to make sure that they're doing everything they can to keep those animals alive. But you can encourage them to leave, particularly if they're under your deck or places where you would just as soon not have them. You can have loud noises. People talk about putting radios under the deck, big lights, odors, mylar balloons, even though we're not going to release them, but you can hang them in front of where they go in and out. It's very distracting. And so what they're going to do, they have other homes, they have other places to go. They're going to start moving the babies, and it may take a couple of days, but they will move on. And that way you don't have to have forcibly remove them. If you want, you can wait. So many people have fox kits, and they love to watch them playing in the yard, learning how to hunt. And then once they wean, they're going to move off. They don't hang around in the nests or in the dens anymore. And you can go ahead and seal up the places where they were. We talked about the eggs, done all that. Yes. Habituation, real quick. We want wildlife to continue to be afraid of us. If they're no longer afraid of us, it creates problems for other people. So that's why it's against the law to feed wildlife, except for birdseed, which, of course, as we all know, birdseed also feeds the squirrels and the raccoons and everything else when it's on the ground. But we're not feeding them. Um, but if they lose their ability to hunt and forage, then if you stop feeding them, then they starve. They lose their fear of humans, then they have more interactions with people, with cats, dogs, cars, and your neighbors who may not be nearly as wildlife enamored as you are. So you don't want to feed them. You want to try to not feed them on purpose or inadvertently. So these are some of the things you watch for to try to keep from feeding other wildlife. Reptiles, snakes, etc. Turtles, they're very territorial. Turtles have about a 1 mile radius of their life for their whole life in which they live. So when you find a turtle and you need to bring it in for treatment, say it's got a broken shell or somebody has painted it or it's been hit by a car, we're going to ask you the exact location. I mean the street address where you found it, because when it's ready to be released, it's going right back there and it knows it. All right. Some people have called us with little baby turtles saying, "Oh my God, mom's abandoned these turtles. What do I do?" We all know that turtles are reptiles and mom doesn't hang around, and when they hatch, they're ready to go. So only if they're in some danger would you need to interact with them. And as I told you, it's against the law to possess them now because they are endangered. And these are some of the times that they need our help. And if you see a turtle, if it's been hit by a weed whacker, etc., it may need to go to a vet because its shell could have been damaged, but they can actually patch it just like a bone. You can also pick it up carefully because they have very long necks and they can bite you, and you can help it cross the road. But the rule there is if it's going across the road, you take it in the direction it is heading. Do not take it back to where it came from, because guess what? They're going to turn around and go back the way they wanted to go. They know where they're going. We talked about snakes getting caught on glue traps. They get caught in the tomato nettings that we put around our vegetables, and they get caught in there and then they start spinning, which then wraps them up even tighter in that netting. And it can take rehabbers and vets hours to cut the netting off of them. They do eat baby birds and eggs, which we don't like, but that's just the circle of life. And then these are the things when we do want you to intervene, when they are going to need our help. So flies, worms, if it's been caught by a cat or dog, as we talked about, if there's external injuries, if you know for sure the parent's dead or you've tried to reunite and can't, um, if it's had severe trauma, window strikes, or sometimes we'll have juvenile squirrels following people around, climbing up their legs. Something's happened to mom, and they will need our help. This is just some ways that you can make your yards more wildlife friendly. I know we love to have our yards look so nice, but they actually recommend not mowing for a while, leaving some of the debris for nesting, etc. And you can become a volunteer. And then these are just some of the other resources that are available to you in Virginia, DC, and Maryland. And the ways you can help us is you can donate through our wish lists. We have wish lists with Chewy and Amazon. And you can just go to wildliferescueleague.org. You can let other people know about us. You can give out our helpline number, which I put in there many, many times, but if you need it again, I can give it to you. And as I said, we are an all volunteer organization. So transporting, helpline, educating, tabling events. We were at Fairfax County Earth Day last week, Veg Fest. We do lots of we have several fundraisers that we do throughout the year. We have a lot. We do Facebook, we have a Nutley News, we have a newsletter. There's lots of things that you can help with. So we have many, many opportunities depending on what your interest is. And I feel like I ran through that really fast. Hopefully you all got something out of it. And I will now stop sharing. There.
Thank you. Thank you. Thank you. Thank you. That was just so wonderful, so entertaining and interesting. I have one question about that one picture of that bunny rabbit. It looked like it had a green leg or something.
It had a cast or a wrap on its leg. It had a injured
Aha!
leg.
Thank
So it
you.
was
Thank
in
you. I was
rehab.
wondering,
Yes.
I couldn't figure out that image. It looked very
We weren't
curious.
decorating it.
Well, that was just really wonderful. Now, we are in a drought right now, as we talked about earlier, and are we encouraged to put water out for wildlife
I
right
mean,
now?
you can put bowls of water out. Yes. You've got your bird baths, etc. You're just not going to try to feed water to injured or babies. So yeah, just having it out there, that's a great idea. But that's them finding a water source. That's not us, dropping water into their mouths.
Okay. So, everybody out there, anybody have questions for Carolyn?
I've stunned you all into silence.
Well, they're all there. Well, I have to thank you. This was a really wonderful presentation, and I can see how it's really great to go to schools too.
Oh,
I'm
yes.
sure kids really they go back to
And
their parents and tell them what to do.
yes. Oh, and we actually had one that he went home to his mom and had her put the phone number up on her refrigerator. Yeah, and then reported back. So yes, and it's so much fun because you'll say, so does anybody have any questions about birds? Well, I have a dog and and a cat. It's like, great. Do you have any questions about birds? So, always an interesting experience with the kids.
Lisa?
I was curious, what is the process to become a wildlife rehabilitator?
All right. So the process it is a state permit process. So the first thing you have to do is you decide what species you want to rehab. We have to hook you up with a permitted rehabilitator. They're called Category 2. So they are already fully permitted. And they're your supervisor. And they would actually submit a permit application with you or sign off on your permit application. You have to have a dedicated space, depending on the type of wildlife you want to take in, where you don't have the kids and the dogs and the cats running through. And you have to have 6 hours of continuing education each year, which we can help provide for you. Once you've done those things, the state will actually come out and inspect your space to see make sure it meets what you need, what caging you need, et cetera. And once that happens, you get an apprentice permit, and you are allowed to take from your rehabber, not from the public. You're allowed to take orphaned and abandoned wildlife. You cannot take injured or sick wildlife. You do this for 2 years, and at the end of 2 years, you can apply to be a fully permitted rehabilitator. You have to have a vet that's willing to treat your wildlife if you need it. And then you're allowed to take injured and sick wildlife. And people will specialize to the point where some only take eyes open squirrels because they don't have to be fed as frequently as baby squirrels that are fed every 2 hours, 24 hours a day, or baby birds that are fed every 20 minutes, dawn to dusk. So depending on your time frame, how much time you have available would help determine the type of species and the age that you would be interested in taking. If you're taking rabies vector species, you do have to get prophylactic shots, which we help pay for. So that, so you could take baby foxes or baby skunks or baby raccoons in that case. And that's what it takes to become a rehabilitator. It's not a, hey, we'll do this once a week thing. When you've got right now in the middle of baby season, these people are slammed. They'll have 40 squirrels. And when you're going around feeding 40 baby squirrels every 2 hours, by the time you finish feeding them, you're feeding them again. So it's a very dedicated, I say there's a special place in heaven for rehabilitators. So
Sure.
did that answer your question?
Definitely. And they're all volunteers.
Too
which is
much.
amazing.
Never mind.
Yeah, that's so much.
Oh, it's great. It's really
Um,
fascinating. How about anybody else have some ideas and thoughts they'd like to share? It's quite remarkable what these wonderful saints do. Okay, if
I
you
had
don't,
another
go
question
ahead, Lisa.
for you, Carolyn. So there was a lot of great takeaways in that presentation that we could take out for the community, but I was curious, like if there was one message that you think homeowners should hear, like are there certain things that you would prioritize that?
Basically, my personal prioritization is not everything needs our help. So just because you see a bird on the ground doesn't mean it needs our help. Just because mom hasn't been around for an hour or two doesn't need our help. So it's mainly a watch and wait situation, unless it's very clear that it's been injured, caught, etc. But otherwise, that's the first one. And the other one is we really do have to learn to live peacefully and peaceably with wildlife because we have taken over their habitat to such an extent, and they are so good at adapting. But what they're doing is they're adapting in our attics or under our decks or in our yards, which our dogs don't care about. They don't like that. And we just have to realize that, and there's a lot of pros and cons going on about the deer and, legal shoots of deer because it's overpopulated and they're starving and they're stripping all the leaves and stuff. And that's a tough one, but yeah, it's mainly watch and wait, and we've got to learn to live with the wildlife that we have displaced, because they're going to find places to live, and it's going to be with us.
Yeah, definitely. I think the other thing that is like you mentioned questions to ask pest control companies. So if you have a blog post or further information about that, I think that would be of interest to the community as well.
I believe the helpline has the names of one or two humane wildlife conflict management companies that we know do everything they can to remove the wildlife in a way that it doesn't have to be euthanized. So if you have that situation, you could call our helpline and they could refer you to those companies. And in that slide, if you go back and look at, there's a list of, asking them exactly how they do it, because they might say they're humane, but what does that mean? So. Anything else?
Do you have much interaction with the county with their wildlife management group?
With their wildlife management group or with their
Yeah,
animal
well,
control?
with their rescues, like, people call animal control
Yes.
when they have a situation going on their property. And I'm just wondering how you all might integrate.
We actually have a very good relationship. So Risa, who is the new, well, not as new anymore, the animal shelter, Fairfax County Animal Shelter Director, is very wildlife oriented. And they hired, when they moved animal control from the police, when they were called Animal Protection Police, they've moved them back to civilian under the shelter umbrella. And Thomas is their chief animal control officer. He's been hiring and putting them through trainings, very wildlife oriented. They are even trying to establish an intake space at the Fairfax County shelter, the one there off of over by the government center, whatever that street is. Okay, not the one in Lorton, the original one. They're trying to hopefully get an intake center where if animal control officers, and they don't call them that anymore, but I forget what they call them, end up picking up wildlife after our hours, because we really don't have the ability to pick up wildlife after about 5 o'clock in the evening. They would have a place to stabilize it overnight, and then we would come get it in the morning. But we have in the past had animal control officers that will bring the wildlife directly to rehabbers. So the ones that are into wildlife, they are very into it. Arlington County is another really good one. They were trying to build an intake center. I'm not sure where they ended up on that, but they are very wildlife oriented. They're animal control officers. They all will do whatever they can to avoid having to euthanize, unless it's just, there's no option, and so they do it humanely. So yeah, we're very, very happy. In fact, Thomas, whose last name escapes me at the moment, is actually on our board. So that's even better.
Yeah, that's fantastic. I think that's a recent development.
It is.
About the past year and a half. That's fantastic. I was curious how that was integrating. That's great news.
Yes. We always like it when they don't just go out there and just kill it.
Yes.
So,
Great.
anything else? I don't know how long your meeting goes, but we're over time, I'm sure.
Okay, you were fantastic. We really enjoyed this. This is really wonderful, wonderful presentation. I'm so glad we have it to upload to our YouTube channel.
Okay, and if you need anything else, I don't know if you all have an office or something. We do have brochures about us, and also about when you should and should not rescue. Yeah, I'm happy to drop brochures. We've been dropping them. I've been dropping them at the Great Falls Library. So
that's a good place.
Our brochures are at the library. I've been trying to drop them there every quarter. So if anybody needs a copy, they're there. Or if you need, I can make arrangements to get them to someone.
Thank you. That's wonderful. Really,
you're very welcome.
Well done. Well, thank you, Carolyn, for your time and really delightful and informative presentation. And I'm glad I have you as a contact.
Absolutely.
So thanks a lot. And you go off, have a good evening. And we really, really enjoyed it. Thank you.
Well, thank you. I'm very glad.